Hey friends, I have a very messy episode about Evergreen to give you. It's been sitting on my shelf for a while and I just didn't like the way it was turning out, so I figured out how to finish it up. But to make this even more timely, I have received a PDF that's distributed by Evergreen's SEAL, the Student Equity and Arts Lounge, which is the first People's Multicultural Trans and Queer Support Services. Every week in this Student Equity and Arts Lounge, on Tuesdays, there is an Unlearning Whiteness Skills Group. Join us for a weekly drop-in support group focused on strengthening awareness about racism and intervention skills in both interpersonal and institutional settings. Open to everyone, this group may be more relevant to white students, staff, and faculty seeking awareness, education, and action skills to interrupt racism in our everyday lives. Now, while white students get to unlearn their whiteness, both women of color and men of color get their own community and empowerment support and empowerment groups. They get a space for undergraduate and graduate students and staff and faculty to find friendship, mentors, and support and encourage each other's academic, professional, and personal growth. So it seems to me that Evergreen has not learned its lesson. The main thrust of the problem with the day of absence was not that white people were asked or invited or forced to leave campus. All of those different versions of the day of absence story have a grain of truth and a grain of falsehood in it. When you actually look at what was being taught at the day of absence programming, the white students were taught to be guilty about their whiteness, and then the students of color were taught how evil whiteness was, if you go through and look through the whole thing. So Evergreen is still promulgating this whiteness is bad, you need to unlearn it, and we are going to give all this support to people of these other races. Now, I don't have a problem with specialized support. I do have a problem with targeted racist indoctrination. That's the problem that I have. So with that being said, I'm going to release this very messy ADHD style episode, which focuses on Naima Lowe, who has granted somebody an interview, and it seems that she too has not learned her lesson. So here you go. Hey, this is Benjamin Boyce. I am coming to you live from whenever I recorded this, wherever I recorded this, somewhere outside of Olympia, Washington. A friend sent this to me while I was out of the country, and it's another article about Evergreen. It's an article, like so many others, that follows a very specific pattern when it seeks to provide justification for the protesters. Now, this article is written by a guy named P.E. Moskowitz. He's part of a group that's probably caught up in the intersectionality business. And make no doubt about it, it's a business. Anyhow, so like I was saying, this is following a template that came out that I think was developed in part by a guy named Zoltan Grossman, who is an Evergreen professor who I've done a couple of episodes on.
There was a far-right rally that was not by libertarian conservatives, but I've been doing a lot of documentation. I've been working on this kind of research for 30 years, and these were Nazis from Portland.
He wrote an article that he could only get published in the Huffington Post. That's actually incorrect. He also got it published in the Olympian, which is the local newspaper, but they're very inaccurate when it comes to Evergreen because I think they're in cahoots with the Evergreen marketing department. Anyways, in this article, they kind of lay out basically the pattern that other people are going to lay out when they want to justify or be pro-protester. One, you make it about free speech, but you say, yes, free speech is important, but we need to understand that some people have more free speech than others.
And as we said in our article, what about the free speech of those who are working to create equity and diversity at our college? What about their ability to express their academic freedom without fear of intimidation?
There are systemic reasons why the voices of people of color, trans and queer people, and other marginalized groups are not heard in our community and world as much as we would like them to be. So when we think about freedom of speech, also consider that freedom of speech.
One of the things that kind of annoys me about the whole free speech tactic that they use, where free speech is really important, but some people have more free speech than others, others, it goes to say that if you are a part of a marginalized group, you're going to have a less of a voice, and people are going to go after you much stronger. And that might be the case to a certain extent, but that overlooks that if you have facts, you can build an argument on facts, and if you don't have facts, then you kind of need charisma in order to get people to listen to you and follow along with you. And if you don't have either, then it's not the fault of society that you're not getting enough free speech or you're not getting enough attention. Luckily for us, I have a bit of both to share with you. That is charisma and facts. The coolest thing about this article is that he finally gets some quotes from Naima Lowe, and we get a little insight into where she's at right now. Quoting, Naima Lowe has spent the last 6 months recuperating. She still lives in Olympia, Washington, just a few miles from the campus that changed her life forever, but she no longer goes to it. Now, she took a leave of absence in September, and this article was published in August, so that's almost a year. That's 11 months, so I don't know why he brings up 6 months. Quote, every time I start driving to campus, I start breathing heavily and basically having a panic attack, she told me. I don't sleep well. I have pretty intense social anxiety. Things can set me off that don't make sense, feeling physically ill and anxious and not knowing why. And then I remember that from May to July of last year, I was getting death threats almost daily. That is true. And I don't want to demean her experience. I'm sure she received a whole lot of online hate. And when I first reported on her, I tried to steelman her arguments and persuade us to look not even at her behaviors, but her arguments and her ideology to see how her ideology possibly propelled her to acting in the way that she did, i.e. yelling at professors on camera as a media studies professor.
You are now the motherfuckers that we're pushing against. You can't see your way out of your own ass. I can be prejudiced against white people all day long. The white supremacy that lives and breathes within every single white person standing here right now. Right? I know for a fact that I have prejudices. I refuse to shut my mouth and let white people set this agenda. But my ability to assert power based on my social position is really limited. 2 options. Go inside, go home. Go inside or go home. Go inside or go home. And so I think that's a distinction that becomes important for us all to make. If what I'm saying right now pisses you off or makes you feel targeted and defensive, good.
And this is another part of the narrative game that she plays by bringing up the hate that she receives and overlooking the hate that she doles out, and then putting those two things on completely different footing, saying that she doesn't have the power to actually be hateful, except when she's surrounded by students who are following her every whim. Secondly, when she brings up the hate that she receives, she doesn't bring up the criticism that she's also received. For instance, this is a random sampling from a 1,000-page public records request document on Naima Lowe's emails that I received a few months ago. I hope you get effing lynched, you fat piece of N-word shit. Not only you're pathetic enough to act like a complete unprofessional monkey, you even play the victim card. I hope common sense comes back to Evergreen and you get fired. From Edward Murphy, in order to balance a race-baiting life, you will be ordered to collect all your racist crew, babies too, and ask for forgiveness from white America on Bet and Fox News. Don't make me come down there and collect your racist, obese, black arse. Biatch. Right? That's pretty harsh. But on a public message forum called Facebook, Naima asks people to come down and collect Heather's racist ass. As an aside, it seems like the New York Times is taking a play from Naima Lowe's playbook. I don't know how that's going to play out for them. Cotton. Dear Ms. Lowe, you become an important figure in the Evergreen State College debate. I ask you to clarify your position as well as declare your support for the free flow of ideas on colleges, even ones that you find disagreeable. May God bless you. Sincerely, Dan Zachary. Professor, we have likely not met, but I want you to know that I have your back. I am holding you in my thoughts and prayers and knowing that you are encased in love and light. Be safe and know you are loved. Ms. Lowe, as a taxpayer in Washington State, I sincerely hope that you are fired from your position at Evergreen College. In my belief, you do not reflect the values that the majority of residents in this state adhere to and fund through our tax contribution to your place of employment. You have a filthy mouth, and you do not deserve to be employed in a college receiving public funding. I am referring to a published YouTube video taken on the Evergreen campus where you referred to an off-camera person as being one of those effers. What type of environment are you promoting at Evergreen College when you, as a professor, quote unquote, would use that type of language publicly on the campus? When you are fired, I wish that you would take the time to reflect on your vast shortcomings as an adult human and a citizen. Ona Tomek. Not only did she receive hate mail, but she received a fair amount of criticism. And will she ever bring that up? Will anybody ever bring that up to her? Or will she, in the fashion of Zoltan Grossman and other champions of the protests, hide behind this, hate speech, alt-right assault and never look at the actual criticism that calls them to a higher standard of behaving? To return to the article, in a seemingly endless stream of articles, Lowe and her supporters were described as free speech stifling mob and as anti-white radicals. Based on the video evidence that we've already gone through, if you've been following me, we see a very strong illiberal tendency within specifically the Evergreen protesters.
I don't give a fuck how he feels. He targeted black.
Then there is no resolve.
He targeted black.
I actually had a conversation with you.
I don't give a fuck what you did.
That's your problem. That's your problem.
Brett Weinstein, a professor of evolutionary theory and biology at the college who had claimed that his free speech was being stifled, was meanwhile lauded by the press and even testified in front of Congress about the First Amendment on college campuses. Why bring that up? I think, basically to show how this guy made it good and this woman has it bad, and that's how we established the victor-victim narrative. But the fight at Evergreen was only tangentially related to speech. In reality, it was by and large about students and some professors demanding more equity for students of color and LGBTQ students on the campus. What exactly do they mean by equity? Well, equity, to quote Felix Braffeth.
And when Dr. King talks about genuine equality, it goes back to Jossie's question is, if equity is not about the willingness to give something up, then what is it about? Okay? So genuine equality is to me, when we talk about equity nowadays.
To continue. This fact went ignored by the mainstream press, who reported a sanitized narrative that disregarded the consequences of these clashes. Students and professors feeling unheard and even unsafe at their universities, left to battle online and real-life far-righters without institutional support. The students themselves published everything online and made a big stink about it online themselves. They invited this criticism. Now, we can construe a part of the criticism as being violent, as being threatening, as being completely dehumanizing. Yes, that certainly happened. I do not support that. I really wish people wouldn't act that way. But that is being used, just like Zoltan does, of excusing all of the legitimate criticism. By pointing to the deplorables, you get to completely write off the majority of people in the city, in the state, in the nation, and around the world who found the behavior at Evergreen to be indefensible. To wrap up the article, all these free speech fights, in a roundabout way, end up proving the original points of the activists. At Evergreen, Lowe and students fought for more of a voice for people of color on campus. They were shut down. Lowe no longer works there, and I wonder why she was pushed out. She filed a tort claim and won a settlement of $250,000 plus or minus legal fees, and it's no wonder that she was pushed out because she provided the darkest stain upon Evergreen of anybody else. Her behavior, both within emails and on video, was a complete liability for the college. But she can still play the narrative of being a victim. She starts out being a victim, then excuses her behavior, her egregious behavior, and then when she receives backlash, she still plays the victim. The very last quote in this article is, quote, "The image of this beleaguered white man being punished for his racism is so appealing. It gets regurgitated over and over," Lowe told me. Meanwhile, some other people have actually been harmed, and there's no attention to the harm done. At what point do you need to own your own mistakes? And at what point does your ideology become so rancid that you have to perform so many mind-bending loops to push away any sort of comeuppance as being deserved? We can switch her statement over. The image of this victimized black woman being punished for her activism is so appealing, it gets regurgitated over and over. Meanwhile, the entire project of progressivism has actually been harmed, and there's no attention to the harm done. So to wrap up, how is it that a media professor doesn't understand the reactions that her actions have? I think she fully understands the entire hydraulics of attention, especially within the social justice framework. You claim victimhood, you act out, you excuse civility. Let's quote Hillary Clinton.
You cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about. That's why I believe if we are fortunate enough to win back the House and/or the Senate, that's when civility can start again.
You say civility doesn't matter anymore because civility only perpetuates the hegemonic system. So you end up acting uncivil, and that inspires incivility to come your way. And then you say, look at how much racism there is. Look at how much hate there is in the world. So again, look at your methods and then actually evaluate if your methods make sense, but somehow baked into your ideology is that you assume to know the answer, and so you get to behave however you want without actually looking at the results of your behavior, which is the theme that runs through this entire thing. Through all of these stories of protest, it is this huge blind spot that people have developed when it comes to their own character. And then they blame civility and incivility on the system and not on putting their best foot forward. Look at how much hate you put in the world and see if that hate is actually going to inspire people to do anything other than choose to treat you as badly as you want to be treated.